Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scot McKay.
How's it going, gentlemen? This is your main man, Scot McKay, coming at you again with another episode of the Mountaintop Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about something that truly is a unique topic. They're hard to come by, man, after all these episodes we've had over 20 years now. Well, we're going to talk about guided erotic experiences. And I mean, what the heck? I know a lot of you guys are already saying to yourself, I mean, why do I need someone to guide me through an erotic experience? I mean, can I guide my own self and her through the erotic experience? In fact, it kind of feels sort of kinky, like a threesome. What's this guided stuff? Well, to answer all of this in detail, I might add, is a guy I'm just getting to know here. He's a first-time guest. His name is Nicholas Villada. He is an intimacy researcher with a company called Aria. And I can't wait to hear what he has to share with us and teach us about these guided erotic experiences and how they arrived at the need for this and how they put them all together. So without anything further, Nicholas Villada, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You are an intimacy researcher. Is that something that's part of what you do, or are you just full on all about researching intimacy all the time?
Mostly the latter, actually. I came to Aria already as sort of a relationship scientist and sexologist, and at the app, we're just sort of expanding that into a much wider net with tech.
Fantastic. So it says here, you have data from 300,000 plus couples, that's 600,000 plus humanoids, that reveals a specific communication gap that men in particular fall into when it comes to desire. Now, desire is a nebulous word. So tell us about that research, what you found, and how it influenced these guided erotic experiences and how you design those. That we're going to talk about. But I think this is important foundational research, and I want you to riff on it.
Yeah, for sure. So we're pretty familiar at this point with gender differences and approaches to sex, and sort of also the gender differences in sexual desire too, whereby, you know, men tend to be a little bit more inclined to sex just at the drop of a hat, essentially, where women tend to have a bit more of a contextual form of sexual response. That doesn't necessarily hold true for every man or every couple, especially because you start getting into dynamics with your partner. So your own behavior, your own desires start becoming very interdependent with one another, right? So what we find is a lot of men, when they start getting into the relationships, they start approaching sex from, again, more of a direct angle, because it's a facet of the modern male sexual archetype that they are kind of the leader, the initiator, and when they want to have sex, they just let it be known that they want to have sex. Whereas the communication barrier here is then they aren't communicating that in a way that is interpretable as like desirous. Instead, they're communicating that as almost like a biological imperative that they're horny, let's have sex, or something you did made me excited, let's have sex. And in relationships, every time you have sex, it's not an isolated event. It's one event amongst many, many events in an ocean of your relationship. And so when communicating that you want to have sex, the barrier here is resonating that moment of wanting to have sex in the moment you are in your relationship. And we see that women oftentimes are very much already engaged in that kind of dialectic between their own sexuality and the relationship quality and how they're feeling towards their partner or even themselves in that day. It doesn't have to be a relationship quality necessarily that impacts libido or feelings of desirousness. And men tend to, they tend to neglect maybe that side of themselves, where maybe they too are benefiting from things in the relationship that allow them to access sex, or maybe they're using sex as a way to not address maybe these communicative things in their sex lives or intimate lives. And so, like, we just see a natural drop off in communication when, for instance, our users come to Aria and we have women talking about, like, I want to explore just as badly as he does, right? But the reality is that, like, when they try to explore, it feels more like an expectation that they're like just going to be available for a novel experience. And it's almost like the men are sitting there being like, well, of course, like we signed up for something to just explore sex. Why wouldn't we just be having sex? And um, as we all know, sex is so much more than the act itself. And this is a big gulf of communication that we don't have naturally the tools to deal with. We're never really told how to speak a language that is intimate and complex around sex, and instead we're sort of given the tawdry lines that a lot of like pop psychology or like masculinity experts are kind of coming out with once in a while. And the complexity of the emotional impact of the women is just as complex as an emotional impact on a man, and it would really benefit men to lean into perhaps those sides of their own internal self, their own interiority when it comes to sex, and coming to that table discussing more than just, I find this kink interesting, let's do it. And instead, what does bondage, for instance, mean to me? What is this relationship that I'm trying to seek in this act with you? And how do I see it fitting into a sense of my own sexuality? And what am I curious about learning about you, myself, and the relationship through doing this with you? And that's really the bridge that a lot of what Aria is trying to do there with curated experiences, to address that sort of normalization of language, if you will, between partners, regardless of their starting points.
So it gives you kind of a bridge between, well, you talked about a gulf now, didn't you? But
yeah,
between how women talk about sex and how they think about sex and how they would like to express it with their partner, and how men do that. And, you're right on the money, Nicholas. I mean, a lot of guys treat sex as a biological need, not as something that's going to increase, connection or any of that mushy stuff. We don't want that. Mm-hmm. We just want the round peg in the round hole and boom. And you mentioned something about how men are ready at the drop of a hat. The stereotype is if a woman ever says to a guy, hey, you know what? I like you. Let's go screw. The guy'd be like, okay, I'm ready.
Right.
Women just kind of roll their eyes at that. But, we're already ready to rock. We're indiscriminate as long as she looks good to us. I think a lot of women see a lot of men as very shallow when it comes to their sexual needs and wants and, well, how much they've thought about this. There's not a whole lot of depth to a man's sexuality according to the perspective of most women.
Right.
But when a man does show up, as we talk about frequently around here, and knows how to create intimacy, knows what the good version of vulnerable is, can communicate with a woman, can warm her up, can create a romantic experience, oh my goodness, the women melt. And the next thing you know, the same guy who, before he figured all this out, may have said, oh, I just don't think women like sex. Men love sex. Women are playing keep away. They don't even want to have sex. They realize, oh, yes, women are just as horny as we are. Their mechanism for not only their ideation of sexuality, but the actual lead up to sexuality and having sex itself naturally has a lot more depth for women. Now, I don't say that to crack on my brothers here. It's just a simple fact. Well, most of us men, apart from a faith-based experience where, we're saving ourselves for marriage or We have a morality surrounding our sexual behavior. Notwithstanding that, men are like, she's hot, let's go. I'm in. Women hiring male escorts, women even watching quite as much porn as men do, the whole visual, pure stimulation experience, devoid of anything else, has largely, perhaps stereotypically, been considered a male phenomenon. You are literally putting a box together as a guided erotic experience and sending it to couples based on them having a pathway to expressing more vulnerable things, perhaps through Aria as an intermediary, and voila, they get all the props and all the tools and everything they need to actually go through that experience at home. And all of a sudden, man, dude's got a toolbox. And when men have tools, we're off. We're ready to rock. And so
Right.
women see it as cool. Men see it as cool. And the next thing you know, we've both co-signed into doing something a little bit more elaborate and a little more daring. And I believe I'm summing up what you guys are in business to do. Maybe if I'm getting ahead of myself, but I looked at what you do and I researched it all. And that's basically what you're doing. And that's why this research is important to know, right?
Yeah. And in that whole discussion, of, for instance, like preferences in so many different ways, in what you like, both as a sexual partner, but also as somebody just living within the context of whatever your relationship looks like at that moment in time. Arya's not just there as a source of like sending you a box of things for you to like pull out with each other and then just go off. I mean, by all means, if you're that type of a couple, you're set too. But the real mission there is behind the app itself. It's
Well, you guys call yourselves a concierge.
right. So we essentially
This is more curated.
Yeah, everything's bespoke. You get to answer a detailed onboarding process as well as give copious amounts of feedback. Both, it's not just questionnaires or something like that, but to the word that you're using, concierge, we have a team of intimacy concierges. And you will be able to discuss what is going on, what you're interested in, what's not really seeming right about your experience maybe, and perhaps
that sounds
even
pretty spicy for a day job,
right? No, and it is.
I'm a little jealous,
it's absolutely but it's also one of those like the most human things you could possibly be doing that like so few people get to do, maybe besides a therapist. And even then, this is a little bit more a shade removed from being a therapist, because
I would hope
it
doesn't sound very sexy.
Right. It's a person on another side of your phone who you can actually say, hey, I noticed that when I tried to take on a more dominant role, there wasn't a lot of like engagement on her part. And she started laughing. And I don't really know what to do with that. Like, it made me feel like
now
I
I'm going to
just
start laughing, frankly.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, then the concierge comes back and is saying, okay, let's kind of see what that is for you, like what went down for you, but also can sorts out information from the partner to understand where that reaction is coming from. Something we see a lot with a lot of couples who come in is perhaps a partner who is just more dominant in life. And that doesn't necessarily mean they want to be dominant in the bedroom all the time. And oftentimes what dominance in the bedroom looks like isn't necessarily, for instance, if it's a woman, them being rough and demanding, but rather them coordinating everything and kind of like planning it out and making sure everything goes off. And the reality is that can be quite taxing. That's labor that you're engaging in order to have sex with your partner. And if you feel that your partner is benefiting off of that labor without, doing the labor themselves, then you can start finding a case for that person who's like, I just want to be submissive. I just want to acquiesce some of this control over the sex life. And oftentimes that gets confused in, for instance, power play, where, a woman might say, I want you to be more dominant. Like, I want you to be able to lead. I want you to be able to take over the reins here. And men read into that, again, with these larger cultural narratives around what dominance as a man looks like. And they reach immediately for, okay, so she wants me to like get out the bondage tape and a flogger, and she wants me to call her derogatory names in bed or something, right? And
yeah, it's not necessarily kinky.
Right.
It's a human sexual dynamic. Let me jump in here real quick, because you have lots of great things to say, and it's coming at me pretty quickly. I think for a lot of men, we understand that it's cute and fun for women to want to play dominatrix and the kink there. But I think it's a heck of a pattern interrupt for a guy to get into a bedroom with a woman, especially early stage relationship stuff, and have her go, all right, I'm going to direct traffic here. I'm going to tell you what I want. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do next. Because I think most men with any sexual experience, by and large, are used to women going, how do you want me? And if the guy goes, well, I don't know, she's going to lose attraction and go, good grief, do I have to man up and do your job? Men tend to think, all right, if a woman says she's going to be dominant, it's because she just feels like that right now, or it would be hot or sort of kind of naughty, or a change of pace or spicy for her to throw me on the bed and ride me for a while. Not that she's serious about this. I mean, it's got to be in the context of some sort of playful fantasy, not seriously, you're going to tell me what position you want me to be in? This doesn't compute. I think that would be really weird for a lot of men. But if a woman feels like that, and the guy is going to be the kind of partner who helps her really get the most out of her sexual experience, that's where having this whole thing curated and having the conversation between this couple, for lack of a better word, moderated or even created, because they might not even be talking about this. This may all be repressed or suppressed. Having it all come out in the open at least gives you a mechanism for knowing what to do about it, right? Or how to proceed.
Right. I would even, I might actually challenge a little bit of the notion that, that a lot of men don't want to be in a different role in bed, mostly because there is a lot of data that I'm exposed to that we may not be telling our best friends, or giving a lot of visibility into our sexual desires. But there is a lot of men who come to sex thinking that the role that they're given is one that they were given, not one that they chose. And when they enter a dynamic where they're expected to be in charge, a lot of men, like you say, are in social context, have sex in that experience. And so a lot of men, even if that's not necessarily always what they want to be doing, are always doing that. But the people who, again, don't always want to be doing that are looking for some way to change the frequency in which they're inhabiting a more dominant role. And it's, again, like that disconnect and being able to talk about it that means a lot of men never express it to their partner verbally, and they don't talk again to their friends because of their own hangups and worries about like what it could mean in terms of what people will infer from that. And I think that what Aria is doing here is looking at what's under the hood, right? Like not what specs we can see of your car, but what exists underneath everything that keeps it running, and where there may be some deficiencies and like things that needed a little bit of a tune up. And oftentimes those are the shadows of intimacy that we haven't really shown a lot of light on, both culturally, but also within the context of our relationships. So it
All
is
right. So
very
you're
helpful.
talking about the intersection. You're talking about several things here, but the reason why I'm jumping in is because I think this needs to be talked about. You're talking about the intersection of stereotype and statistics.
Right.
And, we live in an all or nothing culture here where, you're either, you think this political party's all correct all the time and the other one's always wrong. My God is the right God, yours isn't. My sports team can do no wrong and your sports team is a bunch of thugs. There's no middle ground. There's no appreciation for someone else's point of view. So that kind of black and white thinking, when it enters into the bedroom, is going to cause friction.
Right.
Automatically, because guess what? There is no such thing as vanilla sex.
Right.
There is no established sexual norm. We have a stereotypical picture where the couple kisses, they take each other's clothes off, and hopefully she has an orgasm. They go, nice, let's clean up. That is a stereotypical mental picture. But you show me a humanoid with their own genetics and their own quirks and their own personalities, and yes, their own kinks and their own fantasies, and I will show you a unique person.
Right.
No one is the same. So we do ourselves a disservice, first of all, by not being honest with ourselves about how non-vanilla we really are, but especially with our partner by not allowing them, or not holding space for them to begin with, but also not encouraging them to be vulnerable and express what they want. Now, I've met brave women who told me all about their fantasies, and they were more shocking than mine. I mean, anybody who's ever read My Secret Garden by Nancy Friday, which came out in like the early 70s, they're left slack-jawed by that shiznit. You know what I mean? These women are crazy. Well, these women are horny, just like we're horny, and they have very in-depth fantasies because they do. They need to be warmed up. They have more elaborate notions of what intimacy and sex looks like to them. And, you did allude to the fact that we as men may be cheating ourselves out of something, a lot of things, by going right after and trying to hit it.
That's, I think, what's really like the missing part of the equation here. It's not
for
that
a
we're
lot
just,
of men.
Yes, it's not just like, hey, engage in a different way in order for her to onboard to try new things with you. But in reality,
that still feels transactional.
Right. And instead, it's very much, wouldn't it be cool if you got to express the things you want in the bedroom and in your relationship and feel like you weren't doing all the work to just like figure out how to do that? And
also, men get a lot more judgy than women do.
Yeah, for
they
sure.
Start going, oh my God, I'm dating this whore. I'm dating this slut. And they start slut shaming her for having these fantasies or these ideations that they just out loud asked her to tell him about. But then he's not ready for it and he slut shames her. That goes on a lot more with men than vice versa.
Oh, 100%. And there's a really cool thing, though, that we find in our data, at least, where when women who tend to be the number one people who actually sign up for ARIA,
which surprised.
Is a fun. It's not surprising when you have the discussion around it, but it's a little bit surprising if you don't have a discussion around why men and women may or may not want help in the bedroom. But I think that what we found really shocking is that once women signed up, men became super engaged. And then once they became super engaged, we started seeing these, the meeting of the minds finally, where men are most motivated by the idea of visualization and novelty. And so that is something that inherently you're signing up for something that is exposing you to new experiences that are customized to your needs and your partner's needs, right? And the other side of it is women don't want to have to do more homework. They want more emotional and sexual literacy from their partner, and they want to explore just like their partner does, but like their main metric may not be novelty, right? Or visualization. So then you have this third party come in, right? That's saying, don't worry. How about you aren't the one planning women? How about you aren't the one who has to take ownership over this? Even if you sign up for it, the reason you're signing up for it is because you're done with that. And instead, let's go ahead and expose you to a bunch of things that allow you to just inhabit sexuality with your partner and approach it a lot more as a fun, recreational part of your relationship that builds also what you want, connection.
Well,
And
you know what,
then,
Nicholas? I think that a lot of guys are going to look at this kind of like a green eggs and ham situation. You're telling me I've got to give up my control over my sex life and relinquish it to some company that I'm paying for every month and let them curate this thing? That feels kind of emasculating. I'm sure your question back to them is, well, how's that working for you, Bubba?
yes, and also no one here is actually taking any control out of your hands. We're actually giving you all the control, obviously with your partner's information as well, to guide this process that you yourself want to go down. And
But I think a lot of men need that reframe to feel better about it. But see, once they try it, they're like, wow, this is great. Where's this been my whole life?
Yes. And they the novelty factor is often the hook, obviously, for men in the process. But again, to what we were talking about, that like missing part of the equation, right? Of like, this isn't just about onboarding her to your sex life. It's also about enhancing your sex life and your relationship to your partner.
Well,
and
if you only knew what was going on in that pretty little head of hers, you might like it.
If only you were able to know what's going on in your own head too, like,
well,
and
sure.
have that come out in a way that's like, again, like not a feeling of embarrassment, but a feeling of like, hey, Aria is like interested in giving us some, content or some stuff on X, Y, and Z. It's not me saying that like I want us to do this. The blame is over here. Even if I messaged the Aria concierge specifically saying, I really want to explore this, how can we get there? It's not going to be presented in that kind of a transactional manner. And instead, that allows both partners to come to the table in a more effective and connective space than, again, that feeling of like, well, I want this, how do I get it?
You have also done other research that I think I want to touch upon. Attraction doesn't fade on its own. The data shows something triggers or kills it in long-term relationships. Now, you and I were joking before we hit record, if she gains 150 pounds within a year of you marrying her, that could trigger it. But you're talking about something deeper, more systemic, or more event-based, or what?
Yeah. So I think a lot of this is, just common knowledge amongst a lot of people in relationships, just without the understanding that it doesn't have to be like that, and that there's actual roots to enlivening sex, attractiveness, etc. Again, and for men, to your point, like we do see the data that one of the biggest predictors of men's relationship and sexual satisfaction is how attractive they find their partner, right? And so it is important for men on that level to have, again, this like visual stimuli component, oftentimes to sex. And so I'm not trying to get around the fact that, there are barriers that just exist on a gender-based level where men are more likely to prize that. But also, there's something that, for instance, if you're getting a curated experience, let's say that you haven't really seen your partner in a more erotic space for a long time. You've kind of like been relying on the type of sex you've been having, maybe, life, chores, work, whatever it is just kind of like on the day to day, and sex is sort of just a function of the relationship at this point. And you're thinking like, wow, well, I missed the time when I wanted to rip her clothes off, right? Well, what we are able to do is give you a curated experience that takes you out of the day to day and say, okay, why don't we do something around seduction? Like, why don't we do something around the art of the tease, like how to drip eroticism towards your partner in such a way that it leaves them wanting again. And that is one of the, for instance, curated experiences, or part of any curated experience you might receive with something like Aria, where it's not necessarily like, hey, sorry, your partner's just like not doing it for you anymore. It's like there's probably other systemic things in your relationship creating that disconnect in your sex life. And why don't we try and take you out of those systemic patterns and give you tools and a whole, night of play guided that you can follow, and hopefully start including that back into your relationship as, again, like routinized novelty, if you want to use the like oxymoron I always throw out there, so that it feeds both. It feeds both the maintenance of the sex life and relationship, while also feeding the need for novelty and desire and mystery again, right?
Along those lines, Aria talks about scenes, and you put that in quotes.
Yeah.
Heat, taste, bound, and more. What are those, and how do they work? And why do couples who use them report deeper intimacy and better attraction? What's up with those? What's the mechanism, and why does it work so well?
So the word scene comes from the Kink lexicon. It defines sort of a play, an event of play, a contained space for play to happen. So we adopted that because we really feel that that is what a curated erotic experience is, even if it's not necessarily a kinkster event that you're experiencing it in. So what, for instance, we give in, let's talk about Heat. Heat is a scene that is a guided 3-week erotic experience that you can culminate in one night, have across multiple nights, etc. But it's going to introduce you into the concept of temperature play in not just feel hot and cold across your body, but rather let's find your erogenous zones. And many people have erogenous zones that they don't know they have. So we give the ability for exploration of erogenous zones, common ways to elicit them. Then we also give you, for instance, a massage oil candle. So for somebody who's like, I kind of want to like have a more sensual night. I want to have hands on my body and then something happen around that. Cool. You can amp it up too, because we'll give you a hot wax candle. And that hot wax candle is going to give you a little bit of that like pleasure pain, but it's not like pleasure pain in a way that many people think hot wax would be. It's a surprising sensation. And then immediately after you peel that wax off your body, your entire body is like vibrating with like a sensation, essentially.
Man, dude's gonna feel like Mickey Rourke after he gets a box from Aria, man. It's gonna be like 10.5 weeks or 3.5 weeks, right? Because you get a new one every month. So yeah, I was thinking maybe the box would be something that you try and do. Yeah. And it's a one night thing, but you're delivering a package that'll take them through next month on this journey.
And there's variations to every single thing that we send. So we're not pretending that like we are going to only give you one thing and it's going to be the exact thing that you need, because what we're curating for is a whole world of things that we think fit for you. And you get to pick and choose all of the different things you want to add into that world. So with
you can modify it so heat, taste, and bound are part of it.
Yeah,
taste
so
being
much.
food and flavor or each other.
Taste is food, flavor, and also it's like you plan a sex menu with your partner in like a fun gamified way, so you get a little bit of like a lighthearted play of like, let's like make something together through a card game essentially, and then you go and
Okay.
have all of the sex that you were outlining in this card
Have
game.
you ever seen the sex position dice?
Yep.
Those are fun. Yeah. Bound,
Bondage. Yeah.
furry handcuffs.
Not
velvet ropes.
furry. We give you some more premium things, but yeah, the concept of bondage is there. And again, you do have
Furry is non-premium. That's a hot take.
Oh, wow. I shouldn't say that there. I'm sure there's very luxurious furry handcuffs out there, and I'm sorry to all of
but yours
those.
ain't it.
Yeah, we are not sending you those, but we will send you a bound box with like whether you want that sort of playful energy to it or you want to go full on like bondage with power. Yeah.
The word more is here. So what else do you have besides heat, taste, and bound?
We have well over like 30, 40 scenes. So you're pretty much stocked for years. And we're building like 2 to 3 scenes every month and a half or so. So
French maid, schoolgirl, nuns
we
and
have
priests.
role plays. We have something like positions, which reflects back to your positions dice, but instead of it being a dice, it's a full like interactive thing with video content and all these different like variations on top of different positions you can do. We have
Naked Twister is very helpful for discovering new positions.
Yeah, we just are about done with a scene called Silhouette, which is going to be you know how you can do those like canvas paint with your body situations, but we're putting it into the Aria space where it's like you're not just gonna lay down on the canvas together, so
Nicholas, this is why we can't have nice things, because you're gonna be splattering paint all over my bedroom.
Paint and wax, lube, anything.
Ice cubes, that dries up. I think it's fantastic and I think it's amazing. The last question you asked me to ask you here, I'll go ahead and bite. What can men specifically do differently to become the partner who keeps attraction alive based on the data? What does the data show? No more stereotypes, no more, I'm guessing, no more projection of my stuff onto everybody else. What does the data show?
An active participation in cultivating the sex life. That's
Not
really
just, hey,
what
let's go at it.
What it really comes down to is I want to talk to you about sex. I want to feel with you in sex. And I want to also have sex that reflects the emotional landscape that we are both living in. And so if that means that for a time we're having a different kind of sex or we're experimenting in a different way, it's reflective of both of our needs and we're talking about it. That's really, really, and it goes back to what we started the conversation with, which is this is just a deficit in the archetype of male sexuality that is now very much necessary in modern relationships. And
a lot of men fumble this, don't they?
Yes, and it's like they're not trying to be like the asshole archetype that like,
I don't think they're trying to be anything negative.
Right,
I think they just feel like they're being them.
Yeah, and the reality is like what they're going to offer by engaging in that process with their partners is being more them. Like it's not actually forcing you to be a different person. It's just saying, hey, let's talk about you. Let's actually talk about you.
And you know what, Nicholas, when men get this right, it's a bonanza.
Yeah.
And women are delighted. We've kind of been talking about contextually committed relationships here. And I know you like to speak to couples. But if you're a guy and you're single and you're getting to know a woman or you're dating several women at once, afraid to talk about sex in principle and have that mental foreplay all day long before you even get into the bedroom, you are missing out on probably the key to the universe. Someone needs to hand you the key to this thing and let you drive, because
Also, it's
that's how
hot,
this is
right?
done, man. And no, women will tell you, no men do this. They're like, okay, how can I reel in the biscuit? How can I get you into bed? How can I bang you and probably leave you afterwards once I get some? It's all a physical impulse. It's a bodily function. Whereas women, you can help them express their fantasies. It's all, first of all, always, always, always safety and security. If you make a woman feel safe and comfortable, she'll chirp like a canary about this stuff. As long as you're not slut shaming her and you're welcoming it and you're validating it. And then the next thing you know, it's all happening, and women are more, well, they're granting you enthusiastic consent, first of all. Second of all, they can't wait to do it again after they've done it the first time. Your sex life is really going to be a bonanza if you can just figure this piece out. So I'm really grateful for what you guys are doing at Aria, Nicholas. I think you're fulfilling a major need in curating this for couples. And what I want to do is I want to send them to your site. And that is easily accessed by going to mountaintoppodcast.com/Aria, 4 letters, ARYA. Although your main website is Aria FYI. And I think they already know what they're going to find when you get there. You can get onboarded. There's, it's actually very cost effective for what you're providing for them. There is a component to this where you send them a box, right?
Yeah.
And it is also curated by humans. I just think what you're doing is fantastic. So guys, you want to check it out. You're curious. Go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Aria and check it all out. Nicholas Villada, who is an intimacy researcher with Aria. Thank you, man. You're just a fountainhead of useful information that's going to make our sex lives better. And I appreciate you, man. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I can only hope so. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, hope is not a strategy. I think, you put the parts in place that really are going to matter. And I think you're going to make a difference if these guys just, they get over the green eggs and ham thing and they give it a shot. So yeah, man.
Period,
Thanks again.
man. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And gentlemen, if you haven't been to mountaintoppodcast.com lately, first of all, get on the phone, talk to me for free for about a half an hour. We'll talk about your life. If it makes sense to put together a coaching program, I'm here for you. At the very least, when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com, get that free report. It's about a 10-minute read. Flip the switch. 5 things you can do right now to be better with women. Won't cost you a dime. All you do is sign up for my daily newsletter, which is fluff-free every day, helping you get better with women by being a better man. Better men get better women, right? Also want to thank our sponsors, Jocko Willink's company, Origin in Maine, the Hero Soap Company, and the Keyport, as always. You can find them at mountaintoppodcast.com as well. And when you use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10, you get an extra 10% off. So you're down with a discount. All of that and more is there for you at mountaintoppodcast.com. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.